Hello. And no. Don't look at the dying plant in the corner. Don't do that. Look at me. You know what? We're gonna move your line of sight a little bit. Is it time to let the snake plant go that only has one single leaf still living, where I've had to rip every other stalk of it out of the dirt? Yeah, probably, but miraculously that one leaf has still survived. So I'm clinging on to it a bit, but anyway, maybe it makes sense, okay? Maybe as the Antichrist, the daughter of Satan, I just was not meant to be the best caregiver to plants. They often die in my presence. I never really gave much thought to that until now, but I think that must be why. My followers know this. They're familiar. They're totally cool. They're like, yes, we love being a member of the cult of haunted hippie. We love our unholy ruler, our dark mistress, etc., etc. If you're new here, that's just something you'll kind of have to get on board with too. And all you have to do to join our cult is click subscribe. It's super easy. And then also click the like button, notification bell, that way you never miss our next meeting. You know that drill. Let's get on to the order of business for today. Today, we finally are going to be ranking every horror release that I watched in 2023. And what I probably didn't include on the thumbnail and in the title and whatnot is that I also want to talk about the horror TV shows that I watched. There were only 5 new horror TV show releases that I watched, so just quickly in the beginning, I want to go through those. And then we will get into the 54 horror films that I watched that released in 2023. I'll be ranking those from worst to best. And I know that a lot of people have been acting kind of precious about worst of lists and everything, but like something had to fall at the bottom, you know what I mean? So let's just say that we're gonna be going from my least favorite to my favorite. Starting with TV shows though, at number 5 we have School Spirits. This was just a fun, entertaining little show. There's not really much else to it. I guess you could say it sort of had a Riverdale vibe to it, but the production value was just a lot lower. To be fair though, I haven't watched Riverdale since I was a teenager. It's been a long time. I'm just pulling comparisons out of my butt. It was fun. I recommend it. It was decent and it was a super quick watch. It only took me like a week to get through all of it. At number 4, we have Swarm. Many of you guys probably watched this one. It's sort of a commentary on fan culture and I believe was inspired by Beyonce and her fans. Dominique Fishback, I don't know how we stopped talking about her. Like, I really don't. She was the absolute standout of that show. I didn't end up loving it overall, but her performance completely carried for me and made it worth watching the entire thing. At number 3, we have Yellow Jackets Season 2. I love that show so much. The casting just could not be more perfect. Again, it's the performances that carry, and also because it's just a gripping show. Like, it's such a weird and crazy premise. I'm obsessed with it. Still can't wait for Season 3, even though I have a feeling it's the type of show that's just gonna like keep getting worse as it goes along. One of those that kind of struck lightning with the first season, and then it's like, you know, did they really have a plan, or are they just gonna keep going because it's popular? I hope they had a plan. I want to see all 4 seasons of life in that forest. But on to my number 2, we have The Last of Us. I bet that you expected that would be at number 1, but I'm not someone that's familiar with the video game at all, or video games in general. I don't know that life. But because it just swept the nation, it swept the world, didn't it? It was fantastic. Like, I really have hardly any notes on it at all. I eagerly anticipate season 2. But my absolute favorite horror TV show of the year 2023 is The Fall of the House of Usher. This immediately skyrocketed to the top of my Mike Flanagan ranking, and I've seen every single thing that he's ever done because I did a giant deep dive on his whole career last year. The Fall of the House of Usher was a combination of every single thing that Mike Flanagan does well, and I'm just so hurt again that somehow we're not all still raving about it. I just finished it like in November, I think, and I already want to watch it again. I liked it more than Stranger Things. I liked it even more than Wednesday. I liked it more than Midnight Mass, more than Haunting of Hill House. It honestly might have been my favorite release of the year, period. Like movies and TV shows. I actually think I can comfortably say that. So, whoops. Should have saved that for the ending, I guess, but oh well. Hi, I'm editing Kylie. We're probably gonna get to know each other pretty well throughout this video for several reasons, but the first of which is that I needed to pop on right here to talk about Goosebumps because that literally just finished airing and it's already fallen out of my head. So needless to say, I would probably rank it dead last out of every show that I watched. I talked about that recently in my December recap, so you can get more of my full thoughts there. There was a lot to like like about it, but unfortunately just a lot more to dislike. That's all from me for now, but you'll definitely be seeing me in a little bit. We still have 54 movies to talk about, so why don't we get into that? As it turns out, there was not a single half-star movie that I watched this year, but I think that that's just because when it comes to half-star movies, I'm now protecting my peace. I've become a lot more comfortable with turning things off, but I don't remember if there was a single release that I watched on this list that I did not watch the whole thing. I believe that 54 through 50 are all one-star films, so to kick that off at number 54, we have The Outwaters. This movie really seemed to have quite a spectrum of emotion in response to it. Most people, I think, were confused, like me, did not like it, pretty much felt that nothing happened, that it seemed like a rather obsessive meditation on one's foot. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I'm actually not going to explain that right now. And then there's this other smaller sect of people that actually really loved it, and I guess because they thought it was original and they were actually scared by it. Not me. Sorry, babes, not me. I kind of felt like it was a waste because there were all these characters and it's a really interesting premise, and I even have been a fan of desert-related found footage movies in the past. I like Phoenix Forgotten, but this felt sort of like a sorry ripoff of that with just zero character development and zero coherent plot. Like, I'm sure if I was paying better attention or if I cared enough, I would have probably gathered more about what was going on in the movie, but it certainly was not enough to hold my attention, and so The Outwaters, I'm afraid, is being crowned as my least favorite of the year. At number 53, we have Snow Falls, and I don't really need to explain this one. You can skip it. It was straight to streaming, and it's just like a very amateur film. It's just not good. At number 52, we have Deadly Dilf, which is a Tubi original. I did actually watch this whole movie in its entirety, and it was ridiculous, and I honestly can't even say that I hated it, because it was an experience, and what is life without experiences? I don't know why that movie is listed under horror. It pretty much just is a straightforward thriller, but I had to watch it because of the name. Like, there was no way that I was not gonna watch a Tubi original called Deadly Dilf. That one I actually gave a 1.5 star rating to, so I guess I didn't really order things very well in this ranking in terms of my star ratings. It's really more just on feeling, you know? Because next up at number 51, we have Pet Sematary Bloodlines, which I actually gave 1 star. So that's a little weird. Maybe I should have put that underneath Deadly Dilf, but I think that I just couldn't deny that the production value was a lot higher for Pet Sematary Bloodlines. But that's really not saying much because I thought the production value of Bloodlines was also really bad. Like, a few cool practical effects, but those moments are not worth watching the entire movie. After having read the book Pet Sematary this past year, which I talked about in my last video, I now understand that there is no movie adaptation that would ever do that book justice. There's no way that any sort of cinematic interpretation could be good enough for that story. So I should have expected better. I didn't expect a whole lot, but it managed to be so much worse than I expected. Anyway, at number 50, we have All Fun and Games, which maybe this should have been underneath Pet Sematary too, just in terms of like the production value, but I will say that there were a couple of actors that I really liked in All Fun and Games. It also was only a blissful 75 minutes long, so I guess there is just a little bit more that I can forgive about that one. I think to me it felt more worth the watch just to see Asa Butterfield act like a complete fucking freak. That alone made it worth it, I will say. I mean, not worth it, like definitely don't watch that movie because it's also edited like a Saw film, but in a really bad way, like in a dumb paranormal kind of way. So getting into our 40s, we have Malum. I thought for the longest time it was pronounced Malum, but absolutely not. This is the remake of Last Shift, I think, by the same director, only like 14 years later or something. These types of remakes just make no goddamn sense. It's like they want to do their original story justice by being given a bigger budget, when in reality, like, the low budget and scrappy quality of their original film was why it was so good in the first place. I'm not super big on The Last Shift, don't get me wrong, but this was the only thing good about it was the lead, and I will say that if you like broke the scenes apart and they weren't a part of a bigger movie, then a few of them would definitely make for really good short films. It's not that it doesn't have its moments, it's just that none of it makes any sense when it's all put together. It's like they just threw the kitchen sink at it. At number 48, this movie is no stranger to this channel, we have Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. If you've been around, you might think it miraculous that it even made it this high up on my list, but I'm not gonna lie to you people, the movie did make me laugh 2 times times, and for that, you know, I have to give it credit. It's still a 1.5-star film though, so let's not get crazy. At number 47, we have Clock. This is a Hulu original, absolutely terrible. This stars Diana Agron, who I love from Glee and from Shiva Baby, and it also stars Jan from The Office. I don't know her name, I'm sorry. That was why I had a tiny bit of fun with that one, but oh my god, is it terrible. The concept is unique and interesting. That's another reason why it gets just a few points, because it's about this woman who thinks she's broken because she doesn't want to have kids, she doesn't want to get pregnant, which is like relevant. It's decently relevant, but they weren't exactly reinventing the wheel. It was very predictable. And overall, again, it just, a lot of the horror elements of it felt like they were recycled from 20 years ago. Kind of a similar vibe to All Fun and Games. It's just way too soon to be bringing all that mess back. The cheap jump scares and the gimmicky editing, I really want us to leave that in the early 2000s. I don't feel like that should ever really come back. Anyway, on to 46, we have Beau is Afraid. This is also another 1.5-star film. Did I mention that for Clock? Beau is Afraid was probably my biggest disappointment of the year because I think that it had to have been in my top 3 most anticipated of 2023. I haven't gone back and reacted to that video. I probably will do that for my patrons. Oh yeah, I have a Patreon. Subscribe to that down below. Bonus videos every week. But it was definitely up there. I know that it had to have been at least in my top 5. So that was a crushing disappointment. I hated that movie. I never really say that I hate movies, but that was a movie that just, it felt like it took years off of my life. I drove out 45 minutes to go to an IMAX theater, and then as soon as I got there, there was like a 40-minute delay putting the movie on, and none of that whole delay situation, none of that is Ari Aster's fault. But then I had to sit through a 3-hour movie in a very uncomfortable IMAX seat. Why they shot this in IMAX, why they put it in IMAX theaters is very much beyond me, because nothing about the movie was fantastical enough to warrant that. You could say maybe the very final scene, maybe. I realized that a lot of this was just self-inflicted, okay? A lot of this is on me, but the movie was also bad, so what do you want me to do? Again, it's another one of those where if you pull out pieces of it or if you separate it by acts, there are a lot of really interesting ideas there. But when it basically just comes down to this one guy being a complete and total loser, living in this weird hyper reality of his own anxiety's creation, what am I supposed to do with that? I don't want it, like, no. Anyways, I don't want to get worked up today. Why am I getting upset? Let's move on to number 45, which is The Exorcist Believer. Oh, interesting. I gave The Exorcist Believer 1 star. So again, like I said, we're kind of just out of order in terms of my star ratings, but I did have to give the movie credit that I at least really enjoyed the first act of it. Like, I was thinking, okay, maybe everybody is crazy. Maybe everyone is wrong and I'm right and this is actually a good movie. And then I watched the rest of the movie. And no, you guys were all right. I should have just believed you. I gave it 1 star because by the time I reached the ending of the movie, all the good feelings from the first act were gone. But I think that in doing this ranking, I was like, you know what? I have to actually give it credit where it was due. Because I enjoyed the first act of The Exorcist Believer a lot more than the entirety of all the other movies I've talked about. But that one I gave its own whole entire review, so go enjoy. Same thing with number 44, which is Five Nights at Freddy's. Talk about a split audience when you're talking about the quality of a film. I feel like for the most part, the majority of film-going audiences, we all disliked it. We could see through all the fan service stuff because, you know, we're not gamers or whatever, and we could see the very shitty movie that it was. But because the fan base is so big, and because so many people that don't even typically watch movies went out to go see this one, I feel like the perception of it is really skewed, but that movie is terrible. It's really bad, okay? So argue with the wall on that. At number 43, similarly, we have The Nun 2. Here though, starting with Five Nights at Freddy's, we're getting into my 2-star films. Well, roughly, because things haven't been completely in order, but this is, you know, mostly 2-star films now. The Nun 2 just had really beautiful direction. It was dripping in that gothic atmosphere. It was fun to look at, but that's the limit of my enjoyment of the film. I didn't think that literally anything else was good about it. And it's like, yeah, Taissa Farmiga, she can act, kinda, but that was it. That was a real big disappointment of the year, because I love the first Nun. I do. It's so bad, and it's so campy, and it's so funny because you can't even tell if it's trying to be or if it's actually trying to be serious. The Nun 2 got way more serious, and so boring. Such a bad choice. At number 42, we have Quicksand. This is a Shudder original, and it's about a couple that, you know, you guessed it, they get stuck in quicksand and they can't get out. It's a really basic premise that I think would have worked as a short film, but when you spend this entire movie watching these people and thinking to yourself in your head, you know, you're really not that far from the edge, it starts to grate on you. You start to get really bored and you start start to feel like these people are really stupid. But not one of the worst things I watched all year. If you are feeling hungry for maybe some travel horror, then go with that one. At number 41, we have Mother May I, which is a Kyle Gallner-led film. We love him, our horror icon. This is a bizarre movie where this guy and his girlfriend end up going out to his deceased mother's house, and she then is inhabited by the spirit of his dead mother. Or maybe it's, he thinks she might be having some sort of psychotic break. It's sort of up in the air, like what's going on, and it's just really not very good. You have Kyle Gallner, who throughout the course of his career has become such an earnest performer. I'm waiting for him to get plucked and to get thrown into bigger movies. Like, I feel like that's in the cards for him. He did get to do Smile last year, which was super huge, but he was paired with an actress that I don't want, she wasn't good, okay? She wasn't on his level. Maybe she will be someday, maybe she'll get there, but it was really tough to watch this movie that was led by just only these two people and have one's talent far outshine the other. So that made it a tough watch, and though it was a unique concept, it just fell really flat. At number 40, we have It Lives Inside, and if this movie came out 15 years ago, I probably would have had it higher atop my list. It's really fun to get into some Indian folklore because we never really see that in the mainstream, but it unfortunately just was so generic. It was absolutely nothing that you haven't seen before. Some cool creature design though. It did have that going for it. My next movie is The Pope's Exorcist, which I gave 2 stars. And also this was a good Letterboxd review. I said Russell Crowe in his Nick Cage era, because it's kind of true. I mean, this movie was completely watchable for Russell Crowe alone. All the rest of it was, it wasn't a good time. Even though Alex Esso was trying her best, and I love her as an actress, I think she's really underrated. I'm glad that Mike Flanagan kind of found her and plucked her up and is helping her career along. But it was really only watchable when Russell Crowe was on screen being kind of like a weird little guy. I don't like exorcism movies, and he kind of made this one a little bit more unique. And it started well. I was thinking, okay, this is funny. This is a dark comedy. He's gonna turn this into an exorcism movie that I actually find watchable. But no, no, it ended up being super generic and kind of all the same. I will watch the next one though. I will, because I think that they might learn from the missteps of the first film. I think in the next one they will focus on sort of like the buddy cop dynamic that they had going on in this one, because that was actually really enjoyable. I would like to see more of that, and I would like to see it lean more into the comedy, because I could see it easily being a franchise that could really find its footing among more of like a comedy audience. At number 38, we have Kids vs. Aliens. This one was released to Shudder. You might not have heard of it. When Gary and Samantha's parents are out of town for Halloween weekend, they host a rager of a teen house party, but then aliens attack, which forces the siblings to band together to survive the night. Technically, that was released in 2022, probably at a festival or something, but it wasn't officially released to Shudder until 2023, so I'm counting it. I also know that The Outwaters was technically a 2022 film, but I think that I already have seen it on quite a few 2023 wrap-up lists because it wasn't widely released until like January of last year. Kids vs. Aliens was fine. If you enjoyed Christmas Bloody Christmas, then I think you'll really enjoy the aesthetic of it, because it was also shot on film and it's also quite colorful, feels kind of like rough and gritty, a little bit of a Rob Zombie vibe, but the story wasn't anything you hadn't seen before. Some of the practical effects are okay, but they're also like not worth watching the entire movie for. I think that it's fun, it's a little bit unique. If you're sort of starved for something to watch, then give it a go. Otherwise, I think you could probably skip it. At number 37, you have The Boogeyman, and this is another one that you can absolutely skip, but I would implore you to maybe give it a one-time watch just because Sophie Thatcher is so incredible. In the beginning of this video, I was talking about how much I love Yellow Jackets, right? So she's becoming a star. She's gonna be one of the next It girls. I'm already telling you that right now. I called that with Jenna Ortega. I called it with Anya Taylor-Joy. I called it with Florence Pugh. You can listen to me, okay? But The Boogeyman is very, very bad. It was very similar to It Lives Inside, actually. And my God, does Stephen King just love a bully. It doesn't matter what century we're in. Anyway, on to number 36, we have The Last Voyage of the Demeter. This one only made it up so high because I love a period piece, and this one was okay in that respect. One thing that I wanted from it was for it to feel a lot more gritty because it was rated R and it was super gory and definitely for the better, but it wasn't gross enough. Like, we were on a ship and all these people did not look dirty enough. I was like, I don't buy that we're on this ship in the 1800s or the 1600s? I don't really know my Dracula history, I'm sorry. So there was a lot that kind of just wasn't fully getting me into the time period. And it also just was so generic and so boring somehow. And I'm like, how do you fumble this bag so hard? I gave the movie 2.5 stars, probably a half star for the gore, because that's, you know, not usually why I show up. Woody Norman is a fantastic child actor. I think I'm also going to call that he's going to become a big star someday. He was really excellent in it. And then of course, my main man, Javier Botet. Now, rather than fully letting him shine, this movie, it could have gotten a higher rating from me if it didn't do this. They often would supplement the practical visuals of him being the freaky little Dracula with VFX and often on his face. And I'm like, no, that's not what I want. When we have Javier Botet, one of the best creature actors in the entire world, you let him do his thing and you do it in camera. So yeah, that one was just a huge disappointment because that was one of my most anticipated of the year also. At number 35, we have The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster. This one starts out really strong and I definitely do still recommend watching it, but I still gave it 2.5 stars just because I personally wouldn't revisit it. It has a lot of really, really strong ideas and I think that this sort of modern day take on Frankenstein was really interesting. They introduced a lot, but then they didn't really follow through on hardly any of it. And it ended up being weirdly predictable. I think it's an exciting new director though, and I'm pretty sure that he'll be worth following. At number 34, we have VHS 85. And with these middle of the road movies, I don't think I'm gonna dwell on them too much. This one was another 2.5 star movie for me. A lot of the ones in the middle are gonna fall in that realm where I'm not mad I watched them. They were even worth the watch, maybe kind of entertaining, but I'm probably not gonna watch them again. VHS 85, I think just kind of solidified for me that I don't think that franchise is necessarily my taste. So not a whole lot wrong with the movie. I'm glad that I watched it, but I don't think I will again. I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep up with that franchise. Same thing with number 33, which is Dark Harvest, which I'd been excited to watch for I think the past 2 years. It kept getting put off. I really liked Sawtooth Jack. I liked the whole concept of it. It sort of was like The Purge meets The Hunger Games meets the 1950s or 60s. It was a little bit unclear to me the time period this movie took place in, but the story somehow ended up being so flat and a lot of it was really disjointed. Again, it was like there was just so much good material there and it just didn't meet its potential. Same thing with It's a Wonderful Knife. I really wanted to like this movie. I couldn't believe that a movie starring Katharine Isabelle and Justin Long that was a dark comedy, holiday slasher, that I didn't like it. I couldn't believe that. But it was another one that fell so flat and I actually gave that one an entire review, and after making that review I learned that nobody else cared about it either because that review flopped. Again, I think that it is worth watching because it's, you know, a decent new holiday slasher. Not good, not great, but one that's worth watching. If you want to see Katharine Isabelle play a lesbian aunt, and if you want to see Justin Long play this kooky mayor that's totally out of place in the movie, then go for it. On to number 31, I'm inevitably gonna get some of those annoying comments that are like, that's not actually horror. Some people are so fucking obtuse. It's like, did you know that things can be multiple genres at once? But I have 65 here. This came out early in 2023 starring Adam Driver. I was super excited for that one. I'm pretty sure I put that one in my top 5 too. And I think I gave it 3 stars. It was also really generic. Like you've definitely seen that type of movie before, or you've seen a show like that before, particularly starring Pedro Pascal. But I love dinosaurs. I ended up thinking the concept of it was pretty cool. Almost nothing about the movie really made any sense, but I kind of was just okay with that. I'm probably never gonna watch the movie again, but it was really fun to watch in theaters. I'm not mad about it because I can find something to love about every single movie of the Jurassic Park franchise. Even Dominion. That movie even still has some moments. So I'm a sucker for dinosaurs, but you're probably not really gonna like it if you haven't seen it yet. Getting into our top 30, we have Sick. This was the Kevin Kevin Williamson COVID-themed slasher. This was a 3-star for me. You know, I don't think I'd really ever watch it again. It wasn't good enough for that, but I'm not mad about it. It was entertaining. It was decent. Normally Kevin Williamson can write a mad twist, you know, normally he can take us there. This one just was a little bit weak for me. I think just collectively the world wants to move on from COVID. Like, I don't think we really want to keep living there. So that also was just not really an interesting aspect of the movie to me. It ended up just being a plot device. I won't spoil any more than that. Moving on to number 29, we have Megan, a movie that, you guys, it's not very good. It's just not. I'm sorry. Like, I understand that it's mostly popular amongst teen audiences, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm really happy for them because to them, Megan is like my Insidious, you know? Something that came out when I was like 11 years old and helped get me into the genre. I'm so happy it exists for that reason, but it's just not very good. I think that a lot of PG-13 movies that have been made have been a lot better than that. But it was entertaining, you know, wasn't mad about it. We'll probably rewatch it someday, so I'll be seated for the sequel. It's fine. At number 28, we have Knock at the Cabin, and this one really only ended up this high because of the performances. I also just talked about the book, The Cabin at the End of the World, and in both the book and the movie, the thematic messaging is just so confusing. Neither the book nor movie knew how they wanted to end, but the performances are just such a standout from pretty much the entire cast. I don't think it's a movie that I want to own. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, but Dave Bautista, man, I'm happy for him. Like, I love to see his range. At number 27, we have The Haunted Mansion, and this one might not be deserving of this spot. I also recognize that because I was invited to the world premiere of that movie at Disneyland. So yeah, that colored my experience a little bit. That movie it's really for kids. Like, not just teenagers, it's really made for kids. But being a huge fan of the Haunted Mansion ride, it's always been my favorite ride since I was a child, surprise, surprise. You could just tell how much this filmmaker loved the ride and how much attention to detail there was. And also, Owen Wilson stole every single scene. I thought he was so funny. Like, the whole theater was just laughing. It was one of the first real theater experiences I had had in a long time, where the whole theater was like very reactive and very into the whole thing. Obviously, because it was the premiere, right? So it was like all the people that made it. So that energy definitely colored my experience. I don't think that I ever want to watch that movie again because I feel like no matter what the circumstance, it's definitely not going to be as good as that first time. But still a 3-star film, don't get me wrong. Oh, look who's back again. I decided rather than to just like keep popping up as a jump scare throughout this video, I would get everything else out of the way right now. That is if I forget something else and in my third round of edits, I have to come back. I'll do that if I have to. Listen, sometimes this happens when I do list videos. Sometimes my eyes and my brain will literally just like skip over entire entries. Not a ridiculous thing to happen considering that I never wear my glasses while I'm shooting videos, but nobody wants to see the glare of the lights on my glasses, right? I hate that. I hate when YouTubers wear their glasses. Anyways, I fully skipped over number 26 and 25, I think, which respectively would be Unseen at 26 and Hell House LLC, The Carmichael Manor at 25. Both of these are 3-star movies for me. I was kind of trying to get through all the 3-star stuff kind of quickly because like none of them are great, but they are all kind of worth watching. That's how I feel about these. I actually finally watched the entire Hell House franchise for the first time and I really enjoyed it, except for the second movie. Don't recommend that one. Unseen is a little bit more unique. This girl gets kidnapped by her ex-boyfriend and then she loses her glasses when she breaks free, and so she's on this FaceTime call with another random girl who has to like guide her through the forest. Pretty cool, pretty unique original concept. The movie was not great, but worth watching, and I think eventually I'd watch it again, although that's kind of hairy to say because like I only tend to rewatch stuff that is not out of sight, out of mind, meaning I usually rewatch my physical media. When it comes to random streaming stuff that you have to rent, I pretty much never ever rewatch that stuff. So if I had it on physical media, I would, but seeing as I don't, I probably won't. And then maybe I should have popped in earlier about this, but whatever. There were 2 movies that I completely forgot to talk about as well, one of them being Swallowed. This one is listed as a 2022 film though, even though it released in 2023, so when I was like going through my Letterboxd diary, it didn't come up. That one is from The Ruins director, and it also stars Jenna Malone and Mark Patton, who we love from the second Nightmare on Elm Street, but we didn't love the movie. It just fell really, really flat. I don't know what it was. I kind of was just feeling the low budget of the film, and not really in a good way, not in a fun, scrappy way. And there was a really unique concept concept, but it just wasn't fleshed out in the slightest. Like, I really think it would have worked better as a short film. And then the same thing happened with a movie called Play Dead. These movies would rank similarly for me. I think I gave both of them 2 stars. Play Dead is another Tubi original, but it does star the guy that played Derek in Scream 2, and it stars, what's her face, Bailey Madison or something. She's from the new Pretty Little Liars reboot. She has to play dead in order to get something out of this morgue, and he's the mortician, and you get it. Very simple premise that was also stretched out quite a bit, though not bad. Some really, really good practical effects, which is why that one is not like bottom tier. Even as a Tubi original, it kind of managed to impress me a bit. So did I give it 2 stars? Yes, but would I call it a waste of time? No. I don't know where I would officially rank Swallowed and Play Dead, but they're both 2-star films for me, so do with that what you will. They would probably fall in like, you know, the 40 range-ish. Sorry to have these jarring cuts. Sorry to do that to you and not have consistent audio quality and all of that, but my brain is not the most organized, so here we are. I'm just glad that I remembered, because there was a good chance of me just completely forgetting entirely. And like I said, there is a chance that I might have forgotten something else, and if I have to pop back on here again when I do my next round of edits, I will. You know what? I will. So I can't promise that you won't see me again, but I hope you don't. Okay, bye. Enjoy the rest of the video. Mwah. At number 24, we have Suitable Flesh. This one, if you like erotic thrillers, go for it. Absolutely go for it. Like I said in my last video, if you're a fan of Hellraiser, like if that's your favorite thing about Hellraiser, then this is a must watch, but everything else about it is not super strong. Like, it was very clear that making it an erotic horror was #1 on the list of priorities. They got a great cast, the performances are fantastic. It is a little bit weird seeing Judah Lewis in that type of role, but I can totally understand that for him. I think it's a really interesting sort of pivotal choice, because we know him as the child actor from like the Babysitter movies most popularly, so I think it's a really good pivot for his career. He is saying, nope, I am not a child actor anymore. I am starring in this absolutely disgusting, super erotic horror movie, alongside Barbara Crampton, no less. So I definitely recommend that one as a one-time watch. At number 23, similarly, we have Influencer. This one could have been higher up on my list, but just for so much of the movie, I had this nagging feeling that they only made it where they did because it looked like an obvious vacation tax write-off. Because a lot of it was montage, just, you know, showing off the beautiful location where they were, to the point where I was just kind of tired and had absolutely nothing to add to the pacing or anything. And it's like, okay, we get it. You wanted to go on vacation. And also for another thing, even though the performances were fantastic, the script was just really predictable. Like, you could definitely tell where it was going. That doesn't mean that it's not a very enjoyable, nice, tight little thriller, because it absolutely is. It's just not going to be the most groundbreaking thing, but definitely worth a watch. At number 22, we have Cocaine Bear. I'm being really soft on this movie. I know that, because no, it's not very good, and a lot of it was not even very funny. And no, there was not enough of the cocaine bear, but I had a good time, and what's even crazier is so did my dad, and that type of movie is just the opposite of his speed. He's really come around. It's a movie that I actually do think that I would own. I love comedies. Like, I'm so obsessed with the fact that Elizabeth Banks made this stupid film, even if it wasn't as stupid as it should have been for the concept, you know what I mean? But I had a good time. I can't lie to you people. At number 21, we have The Sacrifice Game. This was a recent Shudder release. This one, I think that I put so high because it just was dripping in style, and I don't think that I ever picked up my phone once throughout the runtime. Like, I was very entertained. I think the acting was also quite brilliant. The movie took a few turns that I wasn't expecting, but for the most part, it did end up being just a little bit predictable. And like I said in my December recap, I just think that it had such a banging opening that it was never gonna live up to for the rest of the movie. It's always great when a horror movie has a fantastic opening, but then the rest of the movie has to then also be that good, you know? But not every movie can be Jaws. We're finally getting into my top 20 of 2023. At number 20, we have The Passenger. This is another Kyle Gallner-led film, and really, I gave that movie all of its credit because of Kyle Gallner, because it still is only a 3-star film. I gave this movie its own review over on my Patreon, so you can check that out. But like I said, I just think that he is such a strong performer, and his character was really interesting. I think it was one of the most most layered and complex characters that I've ever seen him play. And also, please go in blind if you are going to watch it. If you're a fan of his, I do recommend it. But again, great opening that the rest of the movie does not live up to. I was so shocked, and then nothing else in the rest of the movie ever gave me that feeling, unfortunately. At number 19, we have No One Will Save You, and we are still in 3-star territory. But now I think we're in the territory of, like, this movie was really entertaining. I think that this will kind of be a crowd pleaser. It's fun to get another, you know, little alien movie in the mix. Also, the no dialogue gimmick was interesting. It might take you out of the movie at times because in some moments it just doesn't make any sense, especially because she lives alone. When I'm home alone, I'm making all types of strange noises. I'm practicing speeches, I'm practicing debates, I'm practicing voices, and like, so it took me out of the movie after a little while, but nonetheless an interesting gimmick, and I think the movie will maintain your attention regardless. At number 18, we have A Haunting in Venice, still 3 stars. This one somehow got 3 stars just based on the production design and the camera work and lighting alone. Like, the mise-en-scene, I don't know if it was beat by a single other movie on my list. I'm just scanning the whole thing, and I don't think so. I don't think so. Granted, I think that out of everything on my list, this probably had the highest budget, but the thing that you would expect to care about most from this movie is the murder mystery. And I'm just telling you right now, I didn't care. At a certain point towards the end, it also just becomes incredibly predictable. But for the entire runtime, you're not given a moment to get interested in any of the characters. They're all kind of, you know, wacky, different types of people, which is how whodunits go. But none of them were very interesting, so I didn't really care who the killer was. I didn't care about that at all. But it was a really good trip to the theater because, oh, the gothic atmosphere of Venice, the fact that a lot of it was like shot on location, I was obsessed. That's a movie that I need to own if I ever throw a Halloween party and I need to have really good gothic visuals on the TV. That's the one that I'll go with. At number 17, maybe surprisingly, we have When Evil Lurks, which is yet another 3-star movie for me. People kind of propped it up like it was a movie that was doing things that the world had never seen before. And after watching it, I just didn't feel that way. I thought that a lot of it was kind of overhyped because I was expecting to watch one of the most disgusting movies I'd ever seen in my life, but then I realized that the people saying those types of things on Twitter and stuff were people that probably didn't watch that much horror, so I gotta stop listening to normies when they talk about horror. It was a lot. Like, don't get me wrong, I think this movie does take it places that most movies certainly do not, but I guess I just disagree with the people that felt like this movie was reinventing the wheel. It definitely took a different approach, and for a possession movie, I actually really dug it, because that is a subgenre that I just do not like, and so that also probably colored my experience a little bit. But overall, I just ended up being a little bit underwhelmed. Not that it's not a good movie at all, it's just a lot of it not necessarily my speed. At number 16, we have Infinity Pool. I think now we're getting into my 3.5-star rated films, which is kind of weird because I think that like in my top 30 of last year or something, we still were in like 4-star territory. It was just nuts how much good horror there was last year. Like, my list looks very different this year. Also compared to last year where I watched like 82 movies and TV shows, and this year there was like 60. Anyways, at number 16, Infinity Pool. This was a fantastic film. It has a lot to say and it said it in a very unique way, but a lot of that sort of dark Cronenberg-ish tone is not necessarily my speed. I have so much respect for what the Cronenberg boys do, and I in fact gave Crimes of the Future its own entire review when that came out. I don't think that I gave one for Infinity Pool. I'm pretty sure I didn't, but I might have over on Patreon, but it probably deserved it. There was a lot to unpack about that movie. If you're into weird shit, highly recommend. And same thing for my number 15, which is Skinamarink. This is another one that I feel like is going to be at the top or bottom of your ranking. Let me know. For me, it strangely ended up being a little bit more middle tier just because I simply could not figure out how I felt about it. I thought it was an incredible feat of cinema. I thought it was so unique and so different. Such an expertly executed vision. Like, I was on board. Like, I saw into Kyle Edward Ball's brain. I was like, I get you. But it is a hard sell when you're just looking at the corner of a ceiling for like 20 minutes of the runtime. Completely disagree with the people that say that it messes with the pacing because it's very deliberate. I saw this movie in theaters and luckily I was sober, but I had taken a friend who had taken an edible and he was having a rough time. But I think seeing it in a theater was crucial because if I were at home, I probably would have been like checking my phone and I might have hated it. I would have been like, nothing's happening, nothing, blah, blah, blah. Being in the theater, that super gradual build of this tension, it really got to me and I was severely anxious and I felt legitimately legitimately very frightened by certain moments of the movie. So for that, had to give the movie its flowers. I don't even know if I gave it a little heart on Letterboxd, but I know I gave it 3.5 stars. Cause still, to this day, I'm like, I would need to rewatch it to really tell you if I actually liked it, because I don't know. At number 14, we have Summoning Sylvia, which I could absolutely tell you that I adored that movie. This is about a gay bachelor party gone wrong when they accidentally summon a spirit. This is definitely heavy on the comedy. Like, they for sure were not really trying to make a horror movie with this, but I always give movies grace when it comes to genre, and some people don't like that. It's so much fun. It's good gay culture right there. It also stars Frankie Grande, Ariana Grande's brother. Oh, another really funny part of the movie is that, like, part of the whole setup is that they invite the soon-to-be groom's brother-in-law, who's like ex-military and very masculine, you know? So it also kind of like explores that tension. So not only is it really funny and fun and lighthearted, but then it also explores these pretty heavy themes of, like, you know, searching for acceptance amongst your in-laws. It's a good movie, very underrated. At number 13, we have The Blackening, which I feel kind of similar to. It had a little bit of a moment because it released around Juneteenth, and that's sort of like the theme of the movie. I gave the movie its own entire review because I didn't really see anybody else talking about it, and I was like, you guys need to go see this, because it was so much fun. Like, it was still a 3.5 star movie for me because some of the humor just didn't really hit. Some of the characters I found super annoying, which was part of the point because each of the characters represented some sort of like black trope or black caricature that has popularly been seen throughout film history. So that was partially on purpose, but I got really annoyed by some of them. No, wait, I think it actually was only the nerd character. He bothered me. I just didn't buy it. But the themes are great. If you want a good little movie that talks about how black people are not a monolith, it did a great job at that. It was a lot of fun. I am here for a black scream. Coming in at number 12, we have Thanksgiving. I roll my eyes a little bit because I don't want to talk about this movie anymore. I busted my ass on an entire review of this movie that I released, and then as soon as I heard that it was produced by Spyglass, I was like, yoink, no free press for you. And then I also found out that Eli Roth was a raging Zionist, so no free press for him either. I just assumed that if I didn't even mention it, I would get a bunch of comments asking if I've seen it. I still get some comments asking if I've seen it because I took my review down, so people like don't know. But then it's like, I don't know, follow me on Letterboxd maybe, then you would know. So anyways, moving on to number 11, we have Huesera the Bone Woman. This is such an underrated Shudder release. You gotta watch it. This follows Valeria, who has long dreamed about becoming a mother, but when she learns that she's pregnant, she expects to feel happy, but something is off. So the movie is this sort of horrific exploration of her emotions about coming into motherhood. I don't want to say anything beyond that because I just want you to go into it with fresh eyes. There's been a lot of pregnancy horror, and I think that a lot of it is really good. This one still managed to do something really unique with that subgenre. It definitely horrified me. This is one of the few movies of the year that actually definitely got under my skin. Sound design, mwah, incredible. And also just conceptually, because I want to have kids someday. I want to get pregnant, you know, I want to do all that, but it also fucking terrifies me. I'm almost equal parts just like revolted, horrified, absolutely the hell not. And oh yes, I want it more than anything in the entire world. Like, that is what it is. And the movie is really good at exploring this side of it. But now I say that we get into my top 10 horror movies of 2023. Coming in at number 10, we have Totally Killer, which in hindsight, I'm thinking probably belongs below a few of the other movies I just talked about, at least quality-wise, like for sure. But in terms of how much fun I had with it, it really catered to my needs that day. What can I say? That morning I had watched Pet Sematary Bloodlines, and that was a 1-star film. So in comparison, I was like, Totally Killer is perfect. This is exactly what I needed. This is just, oh, it's what a great dark comedy. It just was what I needed in the moment. If I went back and rewatched it, I think I'd be a little bit disappointed because it's probably more like a 3-star movie as opposed to the 4 stars that I gave it, but that was just what I was feeling on that day. I thought Kieran and Shipka was really fun. I liked a lot of the rest of the cast too. And I am just a sucker for time travel movies. I literally never give a single flying fuck if they make sense. I don't. I really don't try to make me care because I don't. So I think it more or less earned its spot at number 10. At number 9, we have Cobweb, which I thought would make it a little higher on my list. It is a 3.5 star. So I did take into consideration that Totally Killer might not really be a 4 star. So I did did put Cobweb above it, and a few other 3.5-star films. You'll see really soon. Cobweb was like this year's Barbarian, but such an underrated one. It also starred Woody Norman, and like I said, that boy is gonna be a star. And this movie could have been so huge if they didn't completely beef the release date. Why? Why was it released in July when the movie was full of pumpkins and fall cozy vibes? I don't know if I'll ever get over that because I think they did that movie so dirty. Lizzie Kaplan is in it, the guy who plays Homelander, whose name I don't remember right now, he's in it. They're both fantastic. Like the whole cast does such a great job. It very much has a Barbarian feeling, and so in some ways almost feels like a slight ripoff, but still managed to be very surprising. And easily this could have made it higher up on my list if they had gone with practical effects as opposed to all the CGI. That was quite a bummer because that colored a moment pretty poorly for me, but nonetheless, what a film. It's a must watch. It's a must watch of the year. At number 8, we have Evil Dead Rise. Just a rip-roaring good time. Gave this movie its own entire review, so definitely check that out. That was the first horror movie that I saw in theaters with my current boyfriend, and he stuck around after that. Could you imagine? I only say that because he literally just did not watch movies before we started dating. Could you imagine that either? Anyways, I loved Evil Dead Rise. It is now my second favorite of the franchise. I think that's right. I think the only one that I like more than that one is Army of Darkness. I'm so excited for the future of the franchise. The fact that we're going to be getting them every 2 to 3 years now instead of every 10 years, we won. At number 7, we have Scream 6. Oh, by the way, Evil Dead Rise and Scream 6, both 3.5-star movies. Scream 6 was better than Scream 5, better acting from everyone involved, much better death scenes, better chase scenes. We all know this. Everyone has said the same thing. But the uber predictable killers, I just can't get over it. Still can't get over that. I saw the movie 3 times in theaters though, so I still absolutely adored it. But you know, I can't be quite as on board with it as some other people are because I called the ending from so many miles away. Now at number 6, we have surprisingly Insidious: The Red Door. This was a movie that a lot of people didn't like, but it was a movie that resonated so deeply with me. I think because it is pretty slim on the horror elements and it's really, really heavy on the family drama elements, but I love when a family drama is packaged as a horror movie. I mean, see Hereditary. Why were you guys fine with Hereditary, but not Insidious: The Red Door doing that? You know what I mean? I can get it because it's like not what we've come to expect from the Insidious franchise, but that franchise desperately needed a pivot and I really enjoyed it. I think also, especially because like I said, Insidious was the biggest franchise of the time when I was a teenager. Well, no, you'd probably have to give that to The Conjuring, but I was a little too young to see the first Conjuring in theaters. I think I saw the second one in theaters though. So for me, Insidious was it, and I am very close to these characters. So the fact that Dalton and this family sort of grew up with me, seeing Dalton go off to college and deal with these like really intense things that I think are super relatable for young adults, it was just really, really important and impactful. The fact that he was exploring his trauma through artwork, I thought that was an inspired choice. You know, in your 20s, you sort of get to see the man behind the curtain. You start to experience all these emotions that you might have suppressed as a child. You start to look back at them differently and view them from a different perspective. Suddenly, you have empathy for your mother. And that movie explored that so well. I think everyone else is cracked. I think that I'm right and you're wrong. That movie was good, and not enough people have said so. Not to mention the directorial debut of Patrick Wilson. Are you kidding me? Anyways, let's get into my top 5 horror movies of 2023. Number 5, we have Renfield. Yes, little dark comedy. I am such a sucker for so many things about this movie. I love Nick Cage. I love dark comedies. I love slapstick gore. I love Nicholas Hoult. An early crush of mine, especially back in 2013 or 2014 when Warm Bodies released. Then he came back into my consciousness last year with The Menu, and it seems like he's staying in the genre. God bless. Nick Cage is the most perfect Dracula that ever was, and no, I haven't seen the original classic films, to be fair, but he was perfect. I love that movie so much. 4-star film. At number 4, we have Birth/Rebirth. This is another one that we need to wake this up, okay? We need to wake this one up. I'm not gonna read you the synopsis. I'm not gonna show you anything because this is a movie that you have to go into blind. I don't think it would really be a detriment if you looked into it a little bit before you watched it, but just take my word for it, please, okay? Because it made my top 5. And also my dad and I made probably our longest Patreon review ever doing a spoiler chat of that film. So absolutely check that out. It's one of the best conversations I've ever had with my dad about the movie because there was just so much that we were able to relate to and peel back the layers to. And by bouncing ideas off of each other, we just kept discovering new things about the movie. I think it's probably one of the most criminally underrated horror releases of the year. My top 3, they are absolutely not underrated. Most people have hailed these as the best of the year. So to no one's surprise, at number 3, I have Talk to Me. This is the last 4-star film that we have to talk about. I gave this movie an entire review, and I also even gave it a little deep dive, so you can go and watch all of the little interview clips and behind the scenes stuff that I found most interesting. That's all contained in that review. I also did my makeup to try to look like a possessed sort of dead person, so that was cute as well. I've talked your ear off about that movie. I don't think that I have anything else to add. You've also probably watched multiple reviews of that already. You've probably seen it yourself. So moving on to number 2, we have Saw 10. Or Saw X, because it's not technically like 10th. It's not quite a linear franchise, you know. This is another one that I think needs no explanation. It's also another one that I gave an entire dedicated review to. I love Saw. I think that it's absolutely one of the best of the entire franchise. They finally discovered the star power of Tobin Bell somehow. It's never too late for that. Also bringing back Shawnee Smith. I mean, I don't know what to expect yet from Saw 11, but I am gonna have some predictions posted soon. I just hope that they take what they've learned from this excellent film and they apply it to the next one. That was the only 4.5-star film for me though, so guess what? Only one horror film got 5 stars from me, got a perfect rating in the year of our Antichrist 2023, and that would be Godzilla -1. And look, I'm sorry if you don't consider this horror, but take those butthurt feelings elsewhere, because you know what? This franchise started as horror. It's a goddamn creature feature, so you crawl out of my ass, okay? This is another one that I feel like just needs no explanation. It's currently the 3rd highest grossing Japanese film in the United States of all time. It is that good. I would love for it to get some Oscar nominations. I really think that it has the ability to do so, even with the Oscars, you know, always turning a blind eye to horror. The rest of the movies this year, I wouldn't be up in arms about, except for Birth/Rebirth. That could absolutely get some acting noms in my opinion, and maybe some Best Original Screenplay noms. Or is that based on a book? I actually have no idea. Godzilla -1 deserves it for like the effects. Something with the effects definitely deserves a nom. The acting, duh. The sound design and the production design and the costume, like everything. It's just wholly this work of genre-bending art. Yeah, pretty sure it's the only movie on this entire list that made me cry. I can't remember if Saw X, if there was a moment that actually made me tear up. Maybe when John and Amanda were crying and sort of like accepting his death together, maybe then. But I actually don't remember. In Godzilla -1, I cried multiple times and I was like sobbing when the credits rolled. I also think I talked about that enough in my December recap, so I'm not gonna keep pouring my heart out about it. That's gonna do it for my entire ranking of every horror release that I watched in 2023. Overall, not my favorite year for horror. The top 16 movies on my list, I'm glad that we got them, but there was nothing that I was super crazy about besides like my top 5. I think we were just so spoiled by 2022 that it seemed weaker in comparison, but overall seemed like a pretty normal year for horror. If you're new here, I hope that you stick around because pretty soon I'll be hosting the Oscars. That is my horror version of the Oscars, where we actually recognize horror movies and their various talents. And I bring a ton of other creators onto that video in collaboration, so it should be really fun. Hope you stick around. I believe this will be my 4th annual? Could that be? I don't know. I forget. But what I'll never forget to do is thank my patrons. Yes, I already mentioned them in this video, but these are their lovely names scrolling on screen. They make sure that this content is possible, and they get a lot of bonus content over there, so definitely check that out. Also check out my physical media and vlog channel. There's a lot of good stuff over there too. But more than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that I catch you in the next one. Bye!